Southeastern North Carolina Radio Reading Service, a United Way partner agency. We are located on the campus of Fayetteville State University, and our signal is carried by WUNC Chapel Hill. Today is September the 8th, and your radio hosts today are Ronald and Catherine Johnston. We will be reading the news for today's edition of the Fayetteville Observer. Today in weather. Today expect a high of 81 and a low tonight of 57, pleasant with plenty of sunshine. Saturday, high of 79 and a low of 57, nice with plenty of sunshine. Sunday, 75 with a low of 63, sunny intervals, breezy and nice. Monday, high of 74, a low of 76. You can expect some rain and wind from Hurricane Irma. And Tuesday, a high of 80 and a low of 63 Tuesday night. And you can expect showers possibly and being very breezy. For our weekend outlook, aside from one very large wild card blooming in the Atlantic, this weekend looks gorgeous across the Cape Fear region. Highs today and Saturday will probably top out at about 80 degrees, with lows in the upper 50s tonight. Sunday we'll see a few clouds returning with a high in the 70s.
Today in history. Today is Friday, September the 8th, the 251st day of 2017. There are 114 days left in the year. Some highlights for today. On September 8, 1892, an early version of the Pledge of Allegiance, written by Francis Bellamy, appeared in the Youth Companion. It went, "I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." In 1504, Michelangelo's towering marble statue of David was unveiled to the public in Florence, Italy. In 1761, Britain's King George III married Princess Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz a few hours after meeting her for the first time. In 1900, Galveston, Texas was struck by a hurricane that killed an estimated 8,000 people. In 1921, Margaret Borman, 16, of Washington, D.C., was crowned the first Miss America in Atlantic City, New Jersey. We have this applause to Brian Knoll of Cameron, who received a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration in May from Upper Iowa University in Fayette, Iowa. Birthdays from today include ventriloquist Willie Tyler, who's 77, Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, is 76, actor Alan Feinstein is 76, pop singer Sal Valentino of the Beau Brummels is 75, author Ann Beatty is 70, Secretary of Defense James Mattis is 67, Cajun singer Zachary Richard is 67, musician Will Lee is 65, actress Heather Thomas is 60, singer Amy Mann is 57, pop musician David Steele of the Fine Young Cannibals is 57, actor Thomas Kretschmann is 55, rhythm and blues singer Mark Gordon Leverett is 53, gospel singer Darlene Schick is 52, alternative country singer Nico Case is 47, TV personality Brooke Burke-Chavette is 46, actor Martin Freeman is 46, actor David Arquette is 46, TV radio personality Kennedy is 45. Rock musician Richard Hughes Keene is 42. Actor Lorenz Tate is 42. Actor Nathan Corddry is 40. Rhythm and blues singer Pink is 38. Singer-songwriter Eric Hutchinson is 37. Actor Jonathan Taylor Thomas is 36. And finally, rapper Wiz Khalifa is 30.
And today from Livewire, pesticides application is regulated on federal and state levels. The question: I noticed a man spraying along Morganton near Old Farm Road. As I drove down, I noticed a second man spraying in the brush on Morganton next to Beaver Creek. Reminded me of the harmless spraying of Agent Orange. I thought there's a right to know law, so how does one find out what these two were spraying? And the question came from SS of Hope Mills. The answer: it's near impossible to know exactly what the people you saw were spraying. However, we asked Cumberland County Horticultural Agent Kenny Bailey about the county's rules on pesticide spraying. Here's what he told us. Pesticides and their application is regulated by the federal and state governments. From the federal level, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the state level, North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Pesticide law enforcement is done by the Pesticide Division of the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. A person such as a homeowner or a farmer can apply over-the-counter or non-restricted use pesticides to their own property without a license. However, they are required by law to apply them according to the pesticide label. The farmer can apply restricted use pesticides to his or her own property as long as they have a private pesticide applicator's license. Anyone who applies pesticides to property other than their own and for hire must have a commercial pesticide applicator's license, regardless of whether the pesticides are restricted or non-restricted use pesticides. Government employees at all levels of government who apply any pesticide as a part of their work duties must have a public operator's pesticide license. Pesticide applicators licensing is administered by the State Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services Pesticide Division.
And from our Daybreak page, here are some things that you might need to know so that you can take advantage of these opportunities. Coffee with a Cop. The Department of Criminal Justice at Fayetteville State University, National Association of Black in Criminal Justice, and Starbucks have partnered for a panel discussion titled Coffee with a Cop, September 26th from 6 to 8 at Shaw Auditorium on campus. Horse and Carriage Tours. The Downtown Alliance is hosting historic tours of Old Fayetteville by horse and carriage on Saturday from 9 to 2 p.m. in conjunction with the Lafayette birthday celebration. A 30-minute tour inside the circa 1788 Cool Spring Tavern is included. Tickets are $25 per person, $20 with military ID, and $15 for children ages 3 to 12. Tickets may be purchased at 222 Hay Street the day of the event. Blood Drive. The Cape Fear Valley Blood Donor Center has a blood drive today at Cape Fear High School, 4762 Clinton Road from 8:30 to 3 p.m. Donors also may go by the Blood Donor Center, which is open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is open the third Saturday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. All blood types are needed. However, the center has an urgent need for O-negative donors. For more information, call 615-5433. Out of Sight Fundraiser. The Vision Resource Center will hold its 6th annual Out of Sight Blindfolded Dining Fundraiser November 18th from 5 to 10 p.m. at the Hellenic Center, 614 Oak Ridge Avenue. Proceeds benefit programs to assist the center. There will be musical entertainment, silent and live auctions, dinner and dancing. Tickets are $75 per person or $125 for a couple. Go to visionresourcecentercc.org for more information.
From public safety news today, Cumberland County arrests Kaylin Devon McMillan, 21, of Fort Campbell, Tennessee, was charged Thursday with forgery and uttering a forged document. Bail was set at $2,500. Antonio Tremaine Smith, 23, of the 2500 block of Cumberland Creek Drive, was charged Thursday with robbery with a dangerous weapon, assault with a dangerous weapon, inflicting serious injury, and first-degree kidnapping. Bail was set at $50,000. Teresha Tanae Dantley, 23, of Keegan Street in Lillington, was charged Thursday with obtaining property by false pretense and possessing stolen property. Bail was set at $2,500. Jamel Rashad McMillan, 23, of the 900 block of Rutam Court, was charged Thursday with breaking and entering with intent to terrorize or injure, conspiracy, and discharging a weapon into occupied property. Bail was set at $25,000. Joseph Raheem Wall Jr., 25, of the 2300 block of El Dorado Road, was charged Thursday with burning personal property. Bail was set at $10,000. Albert Kane, 28, of the 1300 block of Vandenberg Drive, was charged Wednesday with obtaining property by false pretense. Bail was set at $25,000. Christopher Aaron Hendricks, 19, of the 1000 block of Buckland Drive, was charged Wednesday with 3 counts each of obtaining property by false pretense, financial transaction card theft, and financial transaction card fraud, and 1 count each of receiving stolen vehicles, misdemeanor possession of marijuana, and displaying an expired registration plate. Bail was set at $3,000. Arrests in the Cape Fear region. In Carthage, Gibran Cyril Ewing, 17, of the 100 block of Game Street and Southern Pines, was charged Wednesday with second-degree burglary, possessing marijuana with intent to manufacture, sell, or deliver, misdemeanor possession of marijuana, and misdemeanor possession of drug paraphernalia. Bail was set at $35,000. Carthage, Oliver Orlando Brown, 23, of the 300 block of Sawgrass Road in Eagle Springs, and Kiana Nico Nicholson, 20, of Troy, were charged Wednesday with second-degree burglary. Bail was set at $31,000 for Brown and $5,000 for Nicholson. In Clinton, Ralph Delano Dumpson, II, 23, of the 200 block of Dogwood Circle, was charged Wednesday with breaking and entering with intent to terrorize or injure, misdemeanor domestic criminal trespass, and a court violation. Bail information was not given. Break-ins in Clinton, 4200 block of Autry Mill Road in Godwin, reported at 11:02 a.m. Wednesday. Power generators, a floor jack, lawn trimmers, and chainsaw were taken. And theft in Clinton, Charlie Goodrich reported at 5 p.m. Wednesday that a .22 caliber bolt-action rifle, a pocket knife, and money were taken from his unlocked 2001 GMC Sierra truck while it was parked on Cooper Road in Salemburg.
Cumberland County Schools test scores improve. This article submitted by Monica Vendatoli. Cumberland County Schools' overall test score proficiency rose for the fourth consecutive year, according to data released Thursday. The same data showed that the school district's graduation rate slightly declined this year in comparison to the last school year. The overall percentage of Cumberland County students meeting or exceeding proficiency standards on test scores rose by half a percentage point to 57.3%. Although the school system's overall score is up, Associate Superintendent Ron Phipps said the system has to do better. We've been up 4 years in a row, but we've got to show more gains per year than we are making, he said. We don't want to see ourselves going down either. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction released the 2017 school letter grades Thursday. The fourth annual rankings give school a score based on a number of factors, such as how many students pass the state exams in reading and math, and for high schools, how many students graduate on time. Phipps said he hopes the schools could start increasing their scores by multiple points a year. He pointed to College Lakes Elementary School as evidence that it could be done. That school's score increased by 6 points from 64% to 70% over one school year. That's a really great gain, Phipps said. The state school grades also factor growth goals and graduation rates into the school's composite number. Phipps said 80% of Cumberland County schools met or exceeded growth expectations this past school year, which is down from 84% the previous year. A Cumberland County Schools news release said the school's district's graduation rate for its high schools declined by 0.5 percentage points to 81.4% this year. The release noted that of Cumberland County Schools' 16 high schools, 13 had graduation rates of more than 80%. Phipps said that he would like to see graduation rates increase as well. Each school is given a letter grade corresponding to its score on an A+ through F scale. Cumberland International Early College High School and Cross Creek Early College both earned an A+ rating. This is the second year that both schools have earned this honor. In order to receive the A+ rating, meaning that the school students have a proficiency between 85 and 100%, and the school did not have significant achievement or graduation gaps between students. Clement Elementary School in Autryville was the only other school to earn the top rating in the Cape Fear region. 3 other Cumberland County schools, Beaver Dam Elementary, Jack Britt High, and Cumberland Polytechnic High School, all received the second highest rating of an A for the second year in a row. The rest of Cumberland County schools' results resemble a bell curve, with 21 schools receiving a B, 41 receiving a C grade, and 12 schools receiving a D grade. The system had only one school, Ferguson Easley Elementary, that earned the state's lowest score of an F. Only 29.2% of students at that school are considered to be performing at the grade level proficiency standard set by the state. 8 schools in the public schools of Robeson County District also received F ratings. Shanita Wooten, the interim superintendent for the public schools of Robeson County, noted that Robeson County students endured a number of issues last year, including Hurricane Matthew, that do not normally occur. Overall, the district's scores increased by 2.6%, Wooten said. This is our second year in a row showing improvement, Wooten said. We believe we are moving in the right direction with professional development, addressing the needs of teachers, and striving for continuous improvement for the betterment of our students. The public schools of Robeson County is one of the poorest school districts in the state. A State Department of Public Instruction news release on the grades said school grades are correlated strongly with the poverty level of the school. There is a database online listing every school's grade in the state, and it can be found at http://www.fayeobserver.com/news/2017 09/07/North-Carolina-releases-school-grades.
Bottled water generators snapped up ahead of Irma. One of the oddities of the Cape Fear region, the closer a hurricane threatens, the more difficult it is to find water. As of Thursday, the aisles of area grocery stores were dry enough to grow cactus as concerns grew about the potential path of mammoth Hurricane Irma. My wife and I were part of BJ's this morning, and people were grabbing cases of water as quick as they could put it out there, said Pat Worrell of Fayetteville. We had come by earlier, and I got water for us and one of our neighbors, who's 80 years old. I couldn't see him trying to wade into that crowd and get out unhurt. It was a story that was repeated across the region, as Irma, a Category 5 hurricane with top wind gusts of 200 miles per hour, continued to churn ominously toward the southeast coast. People began to turn from watching and waiting to action. In some places, the stores were ready and waiting. At the Lowe's Home Improvement Store on Ramsey Street, the primary items such as batteries, gas containers, tapes, and tarps were concentrated in one area. Water, generators, and lanterns appeared to be the most desired items. One customer toted a hefty box of AA batteries and was chatting excitedly to others in line. We ran out of batteries during Matthew, and I couldn't get out of that house, she said. That ain't happening this time. At Target on Skybow Road, shelves holding bottled water were draped with notices limiting purchase to 3 packs per customer. By mid-afternoon, the signs dangled over empty aisles. The lessons of Matthew seemed to motivate people as much as concern for Irma. Fayetteville and Cumberland County city officials reminded the public that if Irma's approach required evacuation, they should bring necessary supplies to a designated shelter. Make sure you have different plans in place for scenarios caused by the hurricane, said Glenn Adams, chairman of the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners, during a news conference Thursday afternoon. Your city and county staff and emergency management have taken every precaution to make sure that this community is as safe as it can be. Fayetteville Mayor Nat Robertson added that the lessons of Matthew will pay dividends in the future. We learned so much from Hurricane Matthew just about a year ago, Robertson said. We want to make sure everyone is prepared as we keep our eyes on the inclement weather. Officials said shelters, if needed, could be opened quickly at 71st and Southview High Schools and at the Christina Smith and Kiwanis Recreation Centers. Throughout the day, people appeared to be making preparations. At Harbor Freight Tools on Person Street, Tanya Worrell waited in vain for help purchasing a portable generator. The store had sold out that morning, and a sales clerk said they weren't expecting more until the middle of next week. The few remaining were store displays held securely to the shelves. This is something we really wanted, she said. It was one of the things we learned from Matthew. Outside, a clerk helped Laverne Powell load a small generator into the bed of her pickup. It wasn't as big as she hoped, but it was one of the last available. Earlier in the day, a line of more than a dozen customers had waited at the store, nearly all wanting to purchase generators. I think I got the last one, she said. If the storm comes, it will do what we need to do. Its purpose would be to power a water pump in case of any Matthew-like rain. Floodwaters overwhelmed her in-laws' home last October, causing nearly $10,000 worth of damage. We're not paying that again, Powell said. I know they say they can't tell where the storm is going, added Bobby Bunnels, but we're not taking any chances. We'll have the washing machine full of ice and I've already got water. Once we get everything done, it will be time to watch and wait.
Appeals Court. Judge wrong to revoke probation. A Superior Court judge in Cumberland County was mistaken when he canceled the probations of 2 convicted felons and sent them to prison, the State Court of Appeals said on Tuesday. In July 2016, Superior Court Judge Thomas Locke revoked probation for Dupree Cason Booker and Marquis Antoine Batiste. Booker was on probation for breaking into cars, larceny, and conspiracy. Locke said that Booker violated the terms of his probation in 2015 by being in arrears on payments he was required to make, changing his address without telling or obtaining consent from his probation officer, and leaving the state without telling or getting permission from his probation officer. Locke also said Booker had absconded from probation. The Court of Appeals said the Justice Reinvestment Act of 2011 limits a judge's discretion to revoke probation. Under that law, Booker's actions were insufficient for Locke to revoke Booker's probation, the appeals court said. Batiste was on probation for illegal possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. He pleaded guilty in September 2015, and 12 days later his probation officer said he had absconded. Locke was wrong to revoke Batiste's probation, the Court of Appeals said, because there was insufficient evidence to prove he was intentionally trying to avoid his probation officer and abscond. According to state prison records, Booker and Batiste completed their prison sentences this past July and were released. They now are under post-release supervision. This article was by staff writer Paul Wolverton, who can be reached at pwolverton@FayeObserver.com or 486-3512 and 261-4710.
Police seek help in solving fatal shooting. No arrests have been made in the fatal shooting Tuesday of a Fayetteville woman as she sat in a vehicle in the Lake Rim Estates neighborhood off Cliffdale Road. Jasmine Monique Street 20 of the 400 block of Woodstream Trail was taken to Cape Fear Valley Medical Center at about 1:40 a.m. in 2007 Acura that was on the 900 block of Kennesaw Drive, Fayetteville police said. The driver, Leo Cortez Johnson, 26, of the 5500 block of Livingston Drive, was not injured and drove straight to the hospital where she later died from multiple gunshot wounds. Investigators are asking anyone who was in the area of Kennesaw Drive and may have seen something or anyone with information to contact Detective J. Littlejohn at 818-3468 or Crime Stoppers at 483-TIPS, TIPS, or which would also translate to 8477. And Crime Stoppers is offering a reward of up to $1,000 for information leading to an arrest.
Campbell students killed in Wednesday wreck are identified. From Lillington. 2 Campbell University students who were killed Wednesday in a wreck on US 421 between Irwin and Buies Creek have been identified, the Highway Patrol said. Brandon Patrick Punzelin, 18, of Wilmington, the driver of a 2015 Honda Accord, and Judson Clint Reagan, 18, of Roxborough, the passenger, were pronounced dead at the scene shortly after the wreck was reported at 5:02 p.m., according to a Highway Patrol crash report. Punzelin was traveling west on US 421 toward Buies Creek when his car crossed the center line and ran off the road, hitting a guardrail. The Honda came back onto the road and hit a 2014 Freightliner M2 truck driven by Ronald Leslie Gillis, 40, of the 6400 block of Alley Cooper Road in Godwin. Neither Gillis nor passenger Kyle James Smith, 23, of Willow Springs, were injured, the report said. All 4 people involved were wearing seatbelts. Investigators have not determined what caused Punzelin to cross into the eastbound lanes. The wreck closed the westbound lanes of US 421 until almost 9 p.m. That article written by Nancy McCleary.
Highway Patrol looks to solve 2 hit-and-run cases.
Station work.
The Highway Patrol is asking for help in finding the drivers involved in 2 fatal hit-and-runs that happened in Cumberland County. One happened September 1st, 2014 on Butler Nursery Road, south of Fayetteville. Woodford Gask, 59, was operating a moped on Butler Nursery Road toward North Carolina 87 near Gainey Road about 8:05 a.m., Trooper J.B. Davis said. As Gask reached Gainey Road, a car traveling in the opposite direction on Butler Nursery Road made a quick left turn into the path of the moped. A woman who was behind the moped provided Davis with an account. She told Davis she watched Gask approach the intersection. The next thing I saw was a compact car coming from 87 take a quick left to turn onto Gainey Road and hit the man on the scooter, the woman reported. The man went flying in the air and pieces of scooter went flying everywhere. The driver of the compact type car, which appeared similar to a Dodge Neon, never stopped. Gask suffered at least 1 broken leg and was taken to Cape Fear Valley Medical Center. However, he developed infections and went back and forth between home and the hospital until he died at age 60 in June of 2015. When it first happened, Davis said, we had people in the community who were giving us calls about vehicles. We went by and checked them out, but none of them were the vehicle. There were no other witnesses. Davis remains hopeful that someone with information will come forward so the case can be solved. Each day that passes lessens the possibility of finding that person, Davis said. The second case involves a pedestrian fatality. Just before 9 p.m. on July 28, Tanya Moore, 48, attempted to cross Cumberland Road just east of Ireland Drive, not far from her home on Belfour Road. She never made it. Moore, who had a prosthetic leg and walked with a cane, was struck by a vehicle that was traveling east toward Owen Drive. The impact knocked her into the westbound lane, and moments later she was struck by a second vehicle. Moore was pronounced dead at the scene. The second driver stopped, Trooper T.C. McDaniel said, but not the first. Had the person who struck Mrs. Moore remained at the scene, there would have been no charges for that action itself, Sergeant Jake Katzenberger said. That's because Moore was crossing the road in an area that was not a designated pedestrian crosswalk, he said. Investigators have determined that the hit-and-run vehicle is a 2005 to 2009 Chevrolet Equinox, McDaniel said. That's based on parts of the car left in the road as well as video surveillance tape recorded from a nearby camera. The recording shows that the driver of the car stopped momentarily, then drove away. I know this person who hit Ms. Moore knew they hit something, McDaniel said. Maybe they didn't know it was a person, but knew they hit something. You don't leave a broken headlight and a mirror missing and not know it. Just because a driver is involved in a wreck doesn't mean that person is at fault, McDaniel said. There could have been additional factors involved, but until the driver comes forward, no one will know. This person really needs to turn himself in, Sergeant Kevin Weeks said. We need to hear their side of the story. Anyone with information on either case should call the Highway Patrol at 486-1334 or Crime Stoppers at 483-8477 for tips. And this was written by staff writer Nancy McCleary.
Man accused of assaulting an 11-year-old girl with a brick from Lumberton. A Red Springs man is accused of intentionally throwing a brick and hitting an 11-year-old girl in the head, the Robeson County Sheriff's Office said. The incident happened about 9 p.m. on August the 23rd at a residence on Engle Drive in Red Springs, according to authorities. Ricky Ray Lambert, 47, of Engle Drive, allegedly threw a brick at the girl, a relative, with force, a sheriff's office release said. It was not known why the brick was thrown. The girl was taken to Duke Hospital in Durham to be treated for a head injury and is thought to be back home, Lieutenant Brian Duckworth said. Lambert is charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, inflicting serious injury. Bail was set at $150,000. This article submitted by Nancy McCleary.
Man accused of gun charge on Fayetteville State campus. A Fayetteville man is accused of having a weapon on the campus of Fayetteville State University, police said. Hakeem Sheriff Holt, 21, of 400 block of Carlton Place, is charged with having a weapon on campus or other educational property, possessing marijuana with intent to manufacture, sell, or deliver, and misdemeanor carrying a concealed weapon without a permit. Holt was arrested about 2:40 a.m. after a Fayetteville police officer stopped his vehicle on the 1800 block of Murchison Road, about a half-mile north of Langdon Street, an arrest report said. The officer saw Holt driving off campus and stopped the car for a traffic violation, said Sean Strepe, a Fayetteville police spokesman. The officer detected an odor of marijuana, Strepe said, and called for a drug-sniffing dog to be brought to the scene and found a small amount of marijuana in the car. A handgun was also found in the car. Holt's bail was set at $5,500.
Gen X discovery stirs memories. When Eve Eisen found out Thursday that a potentially harmful chemical had been detected in the groundwater at the Chemours plant near her house, she recalled a meeting more than 11 years ago. Eisen and about 80 of her neighbors heard representatives from what was then the DuPont plant talk about chemicals in the water. She still has the 5 pages of notes she took at the March 2006 meeting. I knew one day I was going to need that, she said. That meeting focused on C8, a suspected carcinogen that DuPont was producing. The company agreed in 2009 to stop making it after it faced a class action lawsuit from thousands of people in Ohio and West Virginia. DuPont slightly altered the chemical, which is known as perfluorooctanoic acid, or PFOA, and named it Gen X. The company started using Gen X at its Fayetteville Works plant off North Carolina 87 in northern Bladen County at the Cumberland County line. DuPont's spin-off company, Chemours, continued to use Gen X, which was discovered in the Cape Fear River by researchers last year. When that discovery came to light this year, the company agreed to stop dumping it in the river. The State Department of Environmental Quality began an investigation of Gen X and other chemicals that were found in the river by the researchers. Tuesday, state officials announced legal action against Chemours and ordered the company to stop dumping the potentially harmful chemicals into the river. The state also started the process to deny the company's wastewater discharge permit. Wednesday, state officials announced that Gen X had been detected in groundwater from wells on the Chemours property. The company said it would offer to test water from nearby residences who get drinking water from the wells. Chemours officials said Thursday that the offer will apply to about 100 residents who use wells within a mile of the plant. State officials have scheduled an information session to answer questions about the groundwater test results. The meeting is set for 6 o'clock Thursday at St. Paul's Middle School. Eisen who said she plans to go to the meeting, has lived on Country Line Road about a half a mile from the entrance to the plant for about 30 years. She said she has been drinking bottled water since the C8 issue arose, but still wants her well tested. I want them to come and check my water, she said. Brenda Corbin said she wants Chemlers to test the well at the home of her parents, John and Mabel Council, who live next to Ison. She said all the residents in the area should have that opportunity. If something's in the water, they can't speak to how far it goes, she said. Ison agreed. We don't want them to pick and choose, she said. Tom Coons, who lives on 11 acres off NC 87 across from the plant property, said Thursday that nobody from the company had contacted him about the issue. Maybe they'll come by and take some of my water, he said. I really hope they can't, that they don't find anything. Billy Kane, who lives about a mile from the plant on NC 87, said 2 Chamorros workers came by his house Thursday morning to take water samples. They said they were testing for Gen X. The workers took 2 samples, then came back about an hour later and took 2 more. I don't expect them to find anything, but you never know. Kane said the Camorra's representatives told him that if Gen X is found in the water, the company will provide him with bottled water to drink. I hope it doesn't come to that, he said. Helen Brockett, who lives in the Point East neighborhood about a mile and a half from the plant, said she isn't too concerned about the Gen X issues because her well draws water from a different aquifer than the Chemours plant. She said her water has been tested several times. Our water quality has always been good, she said. We're not happy about it happening to other folks. And this is from staff writer Steve Devane, who can be reached at sdevane@fayeobserver.com or 486-3572.
From our local and state part of the newspaper, Hope Mills bids farewell to former mayor. They'll come this day to bid him adieu. As for man, his days are as grass. The preacher will look into his Bible and quote from Psalms 103, the 15th and 16th verses. As a flower of the field, so he flourished, for the wind passeth over it, and it is gone, and the place thereof shall know it no more. Al Bradford died Tuesday. He was 101. He'd be pleased to knowing you are today filling the pews of Hope Mills United Methodist Church, just down the way along Legion Road from the burned brick house Al Bradford loved calling home. But don't be sad. He'd want you to know. Not many people you know live to be 100, he was saying just 16 months ago in celebration of his life as a centenarian. Al Bradford lived a blessed life, and Al Bradford would be the first to tell you so. And he lived it out in this old mill town where he enjoyed swimming and fishing as a boy in Hope Mills Lake, working in the old Rockfish textile mill, and later operating his gasoline station along Main Street, where he came to know everybody by name. I really love that lake, he was saying about the town's centerpiece, where construction crews are nearing completion of its restoration after the dam failed 7 years ago. I took over 10,000 pictures of it, and I've still got the negatives. Al Bradford grew up in a children's home in Raleigh, moved to Hope Mills in 1934 to work in the textile mills, and fell in love with Edith Jones along life's way, and they would marry on March 31st, 1942. Before he would serve in Europe during World War II. Things were so uncertain then, Bradford once described those World War II years. The war caused couples to cling close to each other because of the uncertainty of conditions. Discharged from the Army in 1945, Al Bradford settled into Hope Mills life for the ensuing 72 years, including working 9 years as the town supervisor, serving 13 years as a town commissioner serving 13 terms as a town commissioner from 1955 to 1999, and as the town mayor from 1983 to 1992 and 1995 to 1997. I just believe, like our forefathers did, that if we don't work at it, he once said about his interest in public service, we're just not doing our part. Today, the state flag will wave at half-mast from noon until 4 p.m. by order of Mayor Jackie Warner and consensus of the town board to include Mayor Pro Tem Bob Gorman, Jerry Legg, Myron Marley, and Pat Edwards. Dr. J. Robert Kretzu, pastor of Hope Mills United Methodist Church, will remind us of Val Bradford's long and interesting life, his love of people, and his desire to serve at a 1 p.m. service that will be followed by a visitation. A private interment will take place at Big Rockfish Cemetery. But don't be sad. He'd want you to know. Grieve not for me, this soft-spoken man, likely would have us know. Mine, he surely would say, has been a life of abundance with the Lord's promise made and the Lord's promise kept. Not many people, you know, live to be 100, Alfred Norman Bradford was saying just 16 months ago in celebration of his life as a centenarian. It's been a long road, and I can't complain. That was written by columnist Bill Kirby Jr.
Airmen missing in action to be honored. The new POW-MIA memorial will be at Pope Field. For 6 days, Major Leonard Clark and 5 other airmen drifted in the Pacific Ocean as the sun beat down on their bruised and bloody bodies. Salt water stung each time a large wave washed over the side of their inflatable raft. Sharks crept perilously close, retreating only when the battered airmen mustered the strength to swing their boots at them. The airmen survived a crash and beat away sharks, but it was just the beginning of the horror they would withstand as they became prisoners in Japan during World War II. Clark, a bomber pilot, flew missions over the Pacific Theater during World War II for the 5th Air Force 103rd Bombardment Squadron, 43rd Bomb Group, which is the modern-day 43rd Air Mobility Operations Group at Pope Field. He and other members of his squad taken by Japanese forces at Kyushu Island in 1945 will be among 31 airmen honored in a new POW-MIA memorial at Pope Field today. I think about the freedoms that these men fought for, said Susan Clark Lanson, the pilot's daughter. It's important to remember and honor these men. We're not going to forget their sacrifices. Clark died in 2003 at the age of 86. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Since his death, his daughter has pieced together his service through service records and letters he sent to her mother during his tour in the Pacific. Lanson is working with historians and other families to research and track down airmen who were part of the 403rd Bombardment Squadron who may have been declared missing. Because the squadron predates the Air Force and fell under the now obsolete Army Air Corps, complete records of service members are scarce. Clark served in the Air Force from 1939 to the mid-1940s. He began his service as a test pilot assigned to the 43rd Bomb Group's 403rd Bomb Squadron. Clark took a 7-year break and went home to Ohio to work for family businesses. He returned to the Air Force as a major and retired as a lieutenant colonel in 1968. During World War II, units under the 5th Air Force engaged the Japanese throughout the Pacific. Its 403rd Bomb Squadron became one of the primary occupation forces in Japan. The Japanese nicknamed the squadron the Mariba Butchers, a nod to Mariba, Australia, where the unit was stationed and pushed out from. In total, Clark participated in 73 combat missions against Japanese forces in the Pacific Theater during World War II. The mission that ended in a crash and water landing ultimately ended his tour in the Pacific. From what Lanson has pieced together, there was a mechanical issue with the B-25 medium bomber her father was flying, she said. The aircraft was performing missions to clear and neutralize towns in the Japanese islands ahead of infiltration by American soldiers and Marines. The aircraft was headed from Tokyo to Okinawa when it went down. At that time, officers often elected to go down with the aircraft if a crash was imminent to avoid capture by the Japanese, who were known to behead American military officers. Clark, however, successfully landed the faulty aircraft on the Pacific. There were 8 American airmen aboard. 2 drowned trying to swim to the raft. The 6 men who survived were bruised from the crash, Lanson said. She remembered her father broke his collarbone and left leg, yet the men pulled their bodies over the side of the raft. They opened Red Cross survival kits hoping to find fishing hooks and collapsible kits, but were devastated to discover the kits were empty. Clark always said the lack of nutrition and water weakened the men, Lanson recalled. For the next 6 days, the men floated in the ocean with the sun beating down on their bodies. Lanson remembered seeing scars on her father from where the sun and salt water gnawed at his broken leg. The raft eventually caught a current that pushed the airmen closer to land, Japan's Kyushu Island. It would have been a haven if it wasn't filled with the extremist kamikaze pilots and civilians who survived an American bombing just 3 weeks earlier. When the airmen reached Dort Beach in the southern part of the island, they were greeted by Japanese forces, and although Japan had surrendered at that time, the Americans were beaten and left to die. For several days, fellow American airmen circled the skies above, searching for the wreckage. The men were declared missing, and the telegrams and letters were sent to families. Clark's wife, Anna May, received a letter before a telegram. She was distraught, Lanson recalled. This letter is to confirm my recent telegram in which you were regretfully informed that your husband, Major Leonard H. Clark, 0402342 Air Corps, has been reported missing while on a routine flight in the Pacific area since 20 September 1945, according to an October 15, 1945 letter from Major General Edward Witzel. Japanese civilians found the beaten Americans and loaded them onto a train to take them to a kamikaze base in Kanoa. When the train reached its destination, it was discovered that 2 more men had died. Lanson said her father thought the men succumbed to their injuries from the beating because they were too weak from the time on the ocean. He always said they didn't have to die, Lanson said. In the meantime, American soldiers and Marines had arrived in the northern part of the island. The soldiers pushed south and eventually received the 4 surviving airmen. That, in my opinion, is why any of them were alive, Lanson said, noting the Army's role in rescuing the surviving airmen. The men were put on a hospital ship, which took more than 3 months to reach the United States. Even after the crash and 7-year hiatus from the Air Force, Clark was drawn back into service. He served as a bomber pilot in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. He was a patriot, Lanson said. He believed in what he was doing. He believed in what they were doing was the right thing for the world. This was written by staff writer Amanda Dolanowski. It can be reached at Dolanowski at FayetteVilleObserver.com or 486-3528.
Second gunshot victim dies. A man who was found critically injured inside a car in the parking lot of the Smoky Bones restaurant earlier this week died Thursday, Fayetteville police said. Jonathan David Goodman, 32, died at Cape Fear Valley Medical Center, where he had been on life support since he and Darian Tyrese Cook, 18, were found about 11:55 p.m. Officers, during a security check of business, found the men Tuesday night near the restaurant on Skyboat Road. Cook was pronounced dead at the scene. The death brings to 18 the number of homicides reported in the city this year. Anyone with information should call Detective D. Franklin at 723-4650 or Crime Stoppers at 483-TIPS. That would be 483-8477. Crime Stoppers is offering a cash reward of up to $1,000 for information leading to an arrest.
Charges added against trio in double fatal shooting. From Lillington. 3 people accused of fatally shooting a couple last month as they sat in a car parked off Buffalo Lakes Road are facing additional charges, the Harnett County Sheriff's Office said Thursday. Gregory Ricardo Fargas, 25, Jaden Quincy Bailey, 20, both of Lillington, and Tracy Nicole Reed, 33, of Sanford, were charged earlier this month with 2 counts each of first-degree murder in the deaths of Kelsey Lynn Van, 24, of Bryn Drive in Sanford, and Brian James Rosser, 27, of Sand Clay Road in Spring Lake. Their bodies were found August 14th in Van's bullet-ridden 2001 Toyota Camry that was parked on a dirt path between Buffalo Lakes and Twin Ponds Road. Reed, Fargas, and Bailey are charged with 2 counts each of robbery with a dangerous weapon, conspiracy to commit robbery with a dangerous weapon, and conspiracy to commit murder. Fargas also is charged with 18 counts of discharging a firearm into occupied property and 2 counts each of possession of firearm by a felon and possessing a stolen firearm. Bailey is charged with 13 counts of discharging a firearm into occupied property, and Reed is charged with conspiring to discharge a firearm into occupied property. All 3 remain in the Harnett County Detention Center, where they are being held without bail. This is by staff writer Nancy McCleary, who can be reached at nmccleary@fayeobserver.com or 486-3568.
Hurricane Irma devastates islands. French, British, and Dutch military authorities rushed aid to a devastated string of Caribbean islands Thursday after Hurricane Irma left at least 11 people dead and thousands homeless as it spun toward Florida for what could be a catastrophic blow this weekend. Warships and planes were dispatched with food, water, and troops after the fearsome Category 5 storm smashed homes, schools, and roads, laying waste to some of the world's most beautiful and exclusive tourist destinations. Hundreds of miles to the west, Florida braced for the onslaught, with forecasters warning that Irma could slam headlong into the Miami metropolitan area of 6 million people, punish the entire length of the state's Atlantic coast, and move into Georgia and South Carolina. More than 500,000 people in Miami-Dade County were ordered to leave as Irma closed in with winds of 175 miles per hour. Take it seriously, because this is the real deal, said Major Jeremy DeHart, a U.S. Air Force Reserve weather officer who flew through the eye of Irma at 10,000 feet. By late Thursday afternoon, the hurricane was north of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, where authorities reported some flooding and building damage, but no deaths. Big waves smashed a dozen homes into rubble in the Dominican fishing community of Managua, but work crews said all the residents had left before the storm. After 1 million people were without power in Puerto Rico after Irma sideswiped the island overnight, and nearly half the territory's hospitals were relying on generators. No injuries were reported. The first islands hit by the storm were scenes of terrible destruction. French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe said 4 people were confirmed dead and about 50 injured on the French side of St. Martin, an island split between Dutch and French control. The toll could rise because rescue teams had yet to get a complete look at the damage. At least 4 people were killed in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and officials said they expected to find more bodies. Authorities described the damage as catastrophic and said that crews were struggling to reopen roads and restore power. 3 more deaths were reported on the British island of Anguilla Independent Barbuda, and the Dutch side of St. Martin.
Obituaries and news. The following deaths have been reported. See upcoming editions of the Fayetteville Observer for complete obituary information. From Cumberland County, Deb Fleming, 59, of Apex, formerly of Fayetteville, Jernigan Warren Funeral Home. Eric James Johnson, 34, of Fayetteville, Wiseman Mortuary. Mamie Robinson, 105, of Fayetteville, Wiseman Mortuary. Gloria B. Jones, 51, of Fayetteville, Wiseman Mortuary. DeQuan Monicure of Fayetteville, Wiseman Mortuary. And from the Cape Fear region, Kenneth Lee Mooney, 55, of Dunn, Dafford Funeral Home, Dunn. Linnell C. Leake, 35, of Laurinburg, Purcell Funeral Home of Laurinburg. Philip Shepard, 57, of Laurinburg, Richard Bull's Funeral Service. And Willie M. Murphy, 56, of Garland Carter Funeral Home. Eric J. Johnson. Eric James Johnson, age 34, died at home in Hope Mills on Saturday, September 2nd, 2017. Dr. William C. Miller. Dr. William Carey Miller, Jr., 84, Fayetteville, North Carolina, passed away on September 4th, 2017 at Cape Fear Valley Medical Center. A memorial service will be held Saturday, September 9th, 2017 at 3 p.m. at Jernigan Warren Funeral Home with Reverend Priscilla Durkin officiated. The family will receive friends following the service. Arrangements by Jernigan Warren Funeral Home. Charles Herman Brookman. Colonel Charles H. Brookman, Army retired, 90, of Fayetteville, North Carolina, passed peacefully surrounded by family and friends at home on August 31st, 2017. Services will be held at Haymount United Methodist Church on September 11th at 11 a.m. Please select plants in lieu of flowers. Renee Denise Wallace. Renee Denise Wallace, 54, of Fayetteville, died Wednesday, August 30th, 2017. Funeral is Saturday at 1 p.m. at the Wiseman Mortuary Chapel. Viewing at the mortuary Saturday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Wiseman Mortuary. Derek Neal Irvin, 39, of Fayetteville, died Saturday, September 2nd, 2017. Visitation, Colvin Funeral Home Chapel, Saturday noon to 2 p.m. Colvin Funeral Home and Crematory. Sue Edwards Robinson. Sue Edwards Robinson, 64, of Fayetteville, died Wednesday, August 30th, 2017. Funeral Saturday noon, Bible Center Holiness Church, Fayetteville. Viewing at the funeral home Friday from 5 to 7 p.m. Burial, Northside Cemetery, Herring Funeral Care and Cremations. Frank D. Bordeaux, Sr. Frank D. Bordeaux, Sr., 77, of Fayetteville, died Wednesday, September 6, 2017. Memorial will be Sunday at 3 p.m., Rogers and Breese Funeral Home, Chapel. Visitation, Rogers and Breese Funeral Home immediately following the service, Sunday, Rogers and Breese Funeral Home. Eloise Jenkins Green. Eloise Jenkins Green, 92, of Fayetteville, died Friday, September the 1st, 2017. Funeral will be Saturday at noon, Second Baptist Church. Visitation at Colvin Funeral Home Chapel, Friday, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Burial at Cumberland Memorial Gardens, Colvin Funeral Home and Crematory. Billy Botello. Billy Botello, 84, Fayetteville, died Thursday, September 7th, 2017, Jernigan Warren Funeral Home. Gloria B. Jones. Gloria B. Jones, 51, of Fayetteville, died Wednesday, September 6, 2017. The memorial will be Saturday at 3 p.m., Wiseman Mortuary Chapel, Wiseman Mortuary. Larry Blue. Larry Blue, 62, of Marietta, died Tuesday, September 5th, 2017. The funeral will be Saturday at 1 p.m., Ebenezer Baptist. Viewing Saturday, noon to 1, Burial Alligator Community Funeral Home. Luis A. Herrera. Mr. Luis A. Herrera, 32, entered into rest on September 4th, 2017. In lieu of flowers, the family has suggested donation be made in memory of Mr. Luis A. Herrera to the Freedom Service Dogs of America, 7193 South Dillon Court, Englewood, Colorado, 80112. Louis Earl Seymour. Louis Earl Seymour, 87, of Kinston, died Tuesday, September 5th, 2017. Funeral Friday, 6 p.m., Howard Carter Funeral Home. Visitation, Howard Carter Funeral Home, Saturday, 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Burial, Pine Lawn Memorial Park, Howard Carter Funeral Home, in charge of those services. Mildred Juanita Smith, New York, formerly of Wade. Mildred Juanita Smith, 84, of New York, formerly of Wade, died Saturday, September the 2nd, 2017. The funeral will be Saturday, 11 a.m., Wesley Chapel, AME Zion Church in Wade. The viewing at the funeral home Friday from 5 to 7. Burial in Rockfish Memorial Park. Herring Funeral Care and Cremations is in charge. Walter Matthew Taylor. Walter Matthew Taylor, 80, of Lumberton, died Wednesday, September 6, 2017. The funeral will be Saturday at 3 p.m. at Trinity Holiness Church in Lumberton. Visitation prior to the service Saturday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Burial, Gardens of Faith Cemetery in Lumberton. Floyd Mortuary and Crematory in Lumberton handling the services. Christine King, Chadbourne. Christine King, 74, of Chadbourne, died Sunday, September the 3rd, 2017. The funeral will be Saturday, 11 a.m., Mount Tabor Missionary Baptist Church in Saragorda. Viewing at SNL Funeral Home in Fair Bluff, Friday at 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Burial at Mount Tabor Memorial Gardens in Saragorda, SNL Funeral Home in Fair Bluff, in charge of those services. Rosa Lee Leggett. Rosa Lee Leggett, 95, of Lumberton, died Wednesday, September the 6th, 2017. Funeral will be Friday at 4 p.m., Floyd Memorial Chapel. Visitation, Floyd Mortuary and Crematory, Thursday, 7 to 9 p.m. Burial, Fairmont Cemetery, Floyd Mortuary and Crematory in Lumberton, handling the services. Linnell Central Leak. Linnell Central Leak, 35, of Laurinburg, died Thursday, September 5th, 2017. The funeral will be Sunday at 3 p.m. Purcell Funeral Home Chapel, Laurinburg. The viewing, Purcell Funeral Home Chapel in Laurinburg, Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. The burial will be at the Hillside Memorial Park, Laurinburg. Purcell Funeral Home of Laurinburg in charge. Wilma Brown, 95, of Sanford, died Tuesday, September the 5th, 2017. Funeral will be Saturday, 2 p.m., Star of Hope Baptist Church. The viewing at the Star of Hope Baptist Church, Saturday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., Cunningham and Sons Mortuary. William Billy Griffin, 52, of Fairmont, died Monday, September 4th, 2017. The funeral will be Sunday at 2 p.m., Floyd Funeral Services in Fairmont. Visitation following the service at the home of Melissa Griffin, Sunday. Burial is private. Now John Graham, 89, of Roland, died Wednesday, September the 6th, 2017. Graveside services Saturday, 3 p.m., Roland Cemetery. Bowles Funeral Home of Roland in charge of those services.
And today's word from Billy Graham. God has use for every one of us. Question to the Reverend Graham. Our pastor keeps urging us to serve God, but how can I? I'm not talented at anything, and as an older person and a widow, I don't have a lot of money to give. My health isn't the best. I feel kind of useless, to be honest. And the answer from Mr. Graham? Listen, you aren't useless in God's eyes. God uses all kinds of people to accomplish His work, most of whom will never make the headlines or even be noticed by others. Paul thanked God for the Christians in Corinth. Although not many of you were wise by human standards, not many were influential, not many were noble birth. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 26. In other words, it's a mistake to think that God only uses preachers or Bible teachers or missionaries, although we certainly should be thankful for them and uphold them in our prayers. God knows our gifts and our circumstances, and He can use you right where you are. What can you do? First, ask God to make you an example of Christ's love to others. All around you, even in your church, are people who are lonely or hurting, and God can use you to encourage them and let them know they are not alone. A gentle smile, a kind word, an opportunity to visit. God can use these to assure them of His love. God can also use you in the lives of others through your prayers. I am convinced that we will never know this side of heaven what effect our prayers have had, but God knows, and He commands us to pray for those in need. Even when we're sick or set aside because of our age, we still can pray. Remember the Bible's promise. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. James chapter 5, verse 16. You can write to the Reverend Billy Graham at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association at 1 Billy Graham Parkway, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28201, or call 877-2-GRAHAM. The website for the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association is at billygraham.org.
And our Dear Abby today is about a husband's distress over the ex's bad news perplexing his new wife. Dear Abby, I've been married to my husband for 5 years. He's the man of my dreams, and we have a wonderful marriage. Recently, we learned that his ex-wife, to whom he was married for 20 years, has been diagnosed with life-threatening cancer. They have 2 adult children together. I've never questioned my husband's love or devotion to me. What's bothering me is his reaction to the news. They had a horrible relationship and never got along, but he is very upset over this. I'm not sure how to handle this. I don't want to seem insensitive, but the emotion he is showing for her has really hurt me. I realize she's the mother of his children. They've been divorced for years. Please help me understand what's going on with him. Signed, Strong Emotions. Dear Strong Emotions, not knowing your husband, I can only hazard a few guesses. Although he and his ex-wife have been divorced for years, the idea of a possibly fatal illness striking someone who was once so close may be what's upsetting him. Or he may feel some guilt because of the circumstances of their divorce, or her diagnosis may have been a chilling reminder of his own mortality. I hope this will give you some insight because you are going to have to be patient with him until this is resolved. Readers can write Dear Abby at dearabby.com or P.O. Box 69440, Los Angeles, California 90069.
And the horoscopes for today. We'll start with Virgo, August 23 through September 22nd. You may wait to find that you have precious little time available in which to get a certain thing done right. You must make a fast start. Libra, September 23rd to October 22nd. Surprising events will have you doing something you never thought you could do, but there are some who knew you had it in you all along. Scorpio, October 23rd to November 21st. Someone from your past will point you in a certain direction that may prove rewarding to you in the future. Be ready to move swiftly. Sagittarius, November 22nd to December 21st. You don't have to act as quickly as someone else, but you certainly have to keep him or her in sight as you move carefully along the path. Capricorn, December 22nd to January 19th. You and a friend can enjoy working toward a shared goal for a time, but by day's end, you may find yourself moving in different directions. Aquarius, January 20th to February 18th. You know how to follow in another's footsteps without sacrificing your individuality. You can do this with great style. Pisces, February 19th to March 20th. You may feel as though things are not lining up just right, but as the day comes to a close, you're likely to get your way after all. Aries, March 21st, April 19th. You aren't likely to get everything you feel you deserve, but you can certainly finish the day ahead of the game. Taurus, April 20th to May 20th. A demonstration of skills quite different from your own may have you considering a change that could someday yield an increase in profits. Gemini, May 21st to June 20th. You're trying very hard to figure out just who is responsible for what, but this may put you in a vulnerable position. Use extra care. Cancer, June 21st to July 22nd. Whatever is crucial to you is also going to be crucial to others. You may find yourself in a race to the finish line as a result. And finally, Leo, July 23rd through August 22nd. Now is no time to put your desires on a back burner or to try to conceal your exceptional knowledge. Step up and make a difference.
From Cheers and Jeers. Cheers to a woman who bought my groceries at Food Lion. While shopping at the Food Lion at Westwood Shopping Center, I ran into her, and during our conversation, I learned that she had lost her daughter and went through a bout with cancer. And during all this, she explained that someone at another Food Lion had bought her groceries as a pay-it-forward blessing. She insisted on doing the same for me. I learned her name was Valerie. She would not take no for her kind gesture, only asked that I pass this along to someone else if I could. She was a blessing to me and made my day, as there still are a few good people out there that believe in making this world a better place. Signed, Rick Ryan Garvin, Fayetteville.
Lot number 2 wreck area to close for repairs. And this is a byline out of Elizabethtown. Officials of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Wilmington District on Thursday announced plans to close the recreational area at Lock and Dam 2 on the Cape Fear River for repairs. Closure of the recreation area could begin in November. The area, including picnic shelters, fishing pier, boat ramp, and parking areas, would remain closed to the public until the summer of 2018. The closure will allow repairs to significant scour holes located downstream of the dam. Turbulence from water flowing over the dam has scoured a deep hole in the river bottom below the dam. Without these repairs, the scour hole could ultimately threaten the dam's structural integrity. The scour hole is a dam safety-related repair that must be completed to ensure the integrity of the dam, Wilmington District Shallow Draft Navigation Program Project Manager Jim Medlock said in a written statement. The repairs will likely involve using heavy equipment plus on-site storage and placement of quarry rock into the scour hole. Dump trucks and other equipment coming and going into the site will not only make the ramp unusable and unsafe for the public, but will also create too much of a hazard for the public to enter the recreational area. And this This article was presented by Chick Jacobs.
Chief going over the edge for Special Olympics. Fayetteville Police Chief Gina Hawkins is ready to take a big step on behalf of the department in an effort to raise money for Special Olympics. Hawkins is scheduled to take part in the Over the Edge for Special Olympics in Raleigh on September 29, a news release said. She'll be rappelling down the side of the 30-story Wells Fargo Capitol Center in her bid to help nearly 440,000 Special Olympics athletes across the state, according to the Special Olympics North Carolina website. And anyone wanting to take part in the event must raise a minimum of $1,000, the website said. Hawkins has set a goal to raise $5,000. Donations for Hawkins can be made directly to the Special Olympics of North Carolina at tinyurl.com/FPD Chief Hawkins. And this article is written by Nancy McCleary.
That's not the Lafayette we know. Gilbert de Motier de Lafayette, our city's namesake, was born 260 years ago in southern France on September 6, 1757. Luckily for us, Lafayette came to America in 1777 to fight for our freedom in the Revolutionary War. Most historians agree that we would not have won our independence from England without his exploits as a major general on the field of battle and his influence with the French court to persuade France to join forces with America. And luckily for us in Fayetteville, in the midst of the current national debt over monuments, our city was named for a man who was a tireless champion of freedom and the rights of all mankind. After returning to France, Lafayette became an outspoken critic of slavery, and he admonished Thomas Jefferson and even his beloved General George Washington for their slave holdings. Abolitionists like Thomas Clarkson quoted Lafayette frequently in their arguments against slavery. Matching words with deeds and hoping to show a way to end slavery, Lafayette even purchased a spice plantation in a South American colony for an experiment in educating and freeing the slaves there. Unfortunately, his experiment ended after he was imprisoned in 1792 and French Revolutionary forces confiscated his properties and sold the former slaves back into slavery. For years, I have kept in my desk a 2007 Observer article about Lafayette and his stance on slavery. It was written by Rochelle Williams, a former editorial writer and columnist for the paper, who also happens to be an African-American woman. Her fact-based article is an exceptionally fine example of editorial writing. In her article, Ms. Williams notes, toward the end of the American Revolution, he, Lafayette, recognized that Africans in America wouldn't gain the liberties that the country was fighting for, and the idea troubled him. He would spend the rest of his life trying to convince his powerful friends, who were among the founders of the American Republic, to grant freedom to all men. She goes on to quote from letters that Lafayette had written to Jefferson and Adams, and she also tells the story of the plantation experiment. In Fayetteville, we all should celebrate our unique connection to Lafayette. Indeed, North Carolina's official Lafayette birthday celebration is held here annually, and it happens again this weekend, September 8th and 9th. Please check out www.LafayetteSociety.org for descriptions and photographs of the many family-friendly events for you to enjoy, or call 910-678-8899 to sign up for one of the historic tours. And this article was written by Hank Parfit, president of the Lafayette Society of Fayetteville and a former member of the Observer Community Advisory Board.
Trump's, excuse me, Trump's decisions weaken the U.S. This is an editorial by Albert R. Hunt. Richard Bowling, the scholarly congressman of an earlier generation, taught me as a young reporter that politics is a seamless web. Every act affects other actions. It's a shame the late Missouri lawmaker isn't around to counsel Donald Trump. In the past few days, the president displayed anew his ignorance of this reality by threatening to terminate a trade pact with South Korea and by having his administration end a Barack Obama order to protect young immigrants who come here as children from deportation. Even if you are a raging protectionist, taking on South Korea or China on trade at the same time the U.S. needs their cooperation in dealing with the North Korean nuclear threat, perhaps the most dangerous global situation since the Cuban Missile Crisis, is just dumb. And even if you're a raging anti-immigrationist like Attorney General Jeff Sessions, cracking down on undocumented workers now, when many will be desperately needed in the rebuilding necessitated by the ravages of Hurricane Harvey, is just dumb. These issues are connected, though the president doesn't get it. Governing is about more than pandering to your base. At the same time the U.S. and South Korea face escalating tensions from the North Korean nuclear threat, Trump is attacking both South Korea and China on trade deals. That is causing internal dissension in Seoul, according to reports, and not making it any easier to get cooperation from a reticent China in the Korean Peninsula crisis. The renegade North Korean regime has steadily increased its nuclear testing and missiles, causing enormous anxiety. Ian Bremmer, president of Eurasia Group, a political risk and consulting firm, has said that if Trump follows through on his trade threats, the biggest impact will be to imperil U.S.-South Korean security arrangements and to strengthen China's hand in the region. A number of other experts agree. If Trump and North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un are bluffing, they still could exacerbate a dangerous situation. On immigration, the administration's decision to terminate Obama's decision to protect the child migrants comes on top of increasing deportation of all undocumented workers. Congress has 6 months to pass legislation on the so-called Dreamers, while there are reports of considerable fear in immigrant communities, with people trying to hide out in the shadows. This has a direct effect on the number of industries, especially construction, where undocumented workers do a disproportionate amount of the hardest and dirtiest work. The Pew Research Center has estimated that 15% of construction workers are undocumented. Home builders and construction firms are reporting serious shortages in some trades. By some estimates, the destruction from Hurricane Harvey will require as much as a $200 billion rebuilding project. Now another storm, Irma, is barreling through the Caribbean and toward the U.S. mainland. Even though Congress is likely to expeditiously authorize the money for the Harvey disaster, an insufficient workforce will seriously impede the reconstruction efforts. Immigrants played an important role in rebuilding New Orleans and Mississippi's Gulf Coast after Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The task in Houston and other Texas cities is expected to be considerably larger this time, and the environment for immigrants is far more hostile today under Trump than it was under President George W. Bush. New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu, not in office during Katrina, but who was there for some of the rebuilding, said he's convinced the New Orleans rebuilding would not have happened as quickly without the help of the immigrant community. He added, many immigrants, of course, stayed and have become part of this community. Albert Hunt is a Bloomberg View columnist. He was the executive editor of Bloomberg News, before which he was a reporter, bureau chief, and executive Washington editor at the Wall Street Journal.
From the opinion section, the worst is yet to come. It has become axiomatic that when Donald Trump says or does something over the top or below the belt, beware the unseen. His cunning use of distraction turns red herrings green with envy. The template works like this. Trump says something outrageous that drives Washington's bubble belt wild. The media leap to outrage while bookers haul in experts to intone the obvious in exchange for makeup and a limo. Next, the same talking heads, commentators, and columnists lament the time wasted on such trivia as, say, First Lady Melania Trump's wearing stiletto heels to visit victims of Hurricane Harvey. Critics and the media itself lament that important issues are being ignored, while attention is turned on, whether Ivanka and Jared are being snubbed by the DC in crowd, such as it is. The point is taken, but one should note that nothing is ever being ignored by everyone, or rather, everything of import is being monitored and commented upon by someone. And then broadcast and cable producers know and present Trump, and President Trump knows deeply that most Americans don't really care that much about what they insist they care about. A few headlines will get most through the morning. Twitter and Facebook keep the curious plied with updates, and by day's end, who really wants to plunge into tax reform? It is true nonetheless that when Trump needs time to fidget with something that actually matters, he tosses a dead fish into the Dasani tank and waits for the media herdings to begin their march toward the trough. Temporarily spared the spotlight, Trump fluffs the thatched nest above his head and invites his brain to hatch some very bad ideas. Thus, we seem to be on the brink of a nuclear confrontation with North Korea. Remember when he used to worry about Trump having his finger on the nuclear launch button? Square that. When the other antagonist is North Korea's Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, the nightmare can't be dismissed as the twisted hanky of the persistently worried. Never have two less qualified leaders been so endowed with such devastating power without the requisite impulse control upon which living civilizations depend. Not to mention that these two nuke hecklers are unmercifully coiffed to resemble cartoon characters, so that we, the soberly sane, are left to ponder our face-melting demise as a clown showdown between two renegade circus performers. The horror movie It, featuring a diabolical clown and opening this week, couldn't pay for better timing. Meanwhile, one seeks cooler comfort in the memory of the Cuban Missile Crisis between Russia Premier Nikita Khrushchev and President John Kennedy. At least these men were capable of finding an alternative to worst-case scenarios. There seems to be no such inclination on North Korea's part, or frankly, on Trump's. Unless our reality star-in-chief holds his sagacity in reserve for special occasions such as this, there's little reason to assume or hope that he'll diplomatically temper his counterpart's apparent need to demonstrate his manhood. In July, Trump was typically eloquent in describing his approach to thwarting disaster. We'll handle North Korea. We'll be able to handle North Korea. It will be handled. We handle everything. Phew, that. As further insult to reason, this isn't even a conflict over something at least historically rational, such as the now nearly charming contest between communism and Americanism. No battle of wits. The U.S.-North Korea stare down is more accurately a battle of nitwits who seem to think the threatening nuclear holocaust and mutual destruction is a contest to see who has bigger hands. No one would suggest that Trump is responsible for all the nail-biting these past few months, or the Kim's missile and nuclear tests aren't deadly serious. But Trump surely has exacerbated matters with his fire and fury rhetoric. The goading language of ultimatum, more than a bluffing tactic, is an inflammatory agent so that the possible moves inexorably toward the inevitable. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, the president's toughest talking cabinet member, recently said, "We have kicked the can down the road long enough. There's no more road left." Perhaps Kim might argue the same. Meanwhile, a can-kicking strategy, that is, containment and diplomacy, seems a not irrational substitute for mutual annihilation. Have you reached a point of no return? Will the President of the United States fire Kim, or will he invent some new distraction? Staffers, watch your backs while he becomes a stealth wartime leader. Stay tuned. But first, what will Melania wear to the presidential bunker? And this was written by Kathleen Parker of the Washington Post.
And from the Fayetteville Observer editorial staff, keep development ordinance intact. We want to see that neon Haymont shining bright on the rooftop again. We want to be able to stop again at the Haymont Grill and Steakhouse for breakfast, just like many Fayetteville residents did for generations. And we hope grill owner Pete Santeras gets to rebuild his Haymont institution soon. But we don't think that should require a rewrite of the city's Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO. The city's Master Zoning and Rebuilding Code has already taken enough abuse in its short and tortured life. And yet, that's what the City Council agreed to do at a work session earlier this week. Council members want to form a task force to review the UDO. For the Haymont Grill's sake, the ordinance only needs a tweak. It says that a building that has more than 50% damage during a fire or other disaster must be brought up to current building standards. And in the grill's tight location, that can be done. Landscaping and a parking lot are out of the question in that tightly packed little island between Morganton and Fort Bragg roads. There are two simple routes for making that happen. Change the ordinance so historic structures like the grill are grandfathered and can rebuild as they were, or simply let the appropriate city boards grant a variance for a building permit. Neither of these options would require a task force reviewing the whole ordinance. But there's more going on here than the Haymont Grill, despite Councilman Bill Crisp's explanation. I used to go to breakfast at the Haymont Grill. This is why we have to do something about our rigid building codes. Rigid? How many times has the UDO already been modified to accommodate unhappy builders and developers? How many more reviews will it take before the UDO is as worthless as the ancient jumble of ordinance that preceded us? Not many. But that's really what's going on here. Fayetteville builders and developers are influential and politically active. They pour money into mayoral and city council races, favoring candidates who will help them get what they want and need. That's the way it is in many communities. It's certainly not peculiar to Fayetteville. What is peculiar to Fayetteville is the frequency with which the builders get what they're after. For Exhibit A, we offer the city's own appearance, a hodgepodge of ugly buildings, uglier signs, and little required landscaping around commercial properties. Sidewalks, pocket parks, walking trails, not until they were required by the UDO, and that made a lot of developers apoplectic and got them knocking down the doors of the politicians who owe them favors in return for their generous donations. In a few years since the passage of the UDO, some council members have stood up to the pressure and tried their best to protect the development ordinance. But the push for gutting the ordinance, and especially its badly needed stormwater management requirements, is intensifying. And yet there is nothing in the UDO that is tougher than you'd find in any other city's codes. Most of the ideas in the UDO were adapted from other communities that are years ahead of us in creating attractive, safe places to live and do business. If our leaders say they want to create a modern, progressive community that will attract top-shelf businesses, we've got to look the part. We want to see the Haymont Grill make a successful comeback, but we also want a city whose development is guided by a smart 21st century set of development codes. Further gutting the UDO isn't the way to make that happen.
DeVos to scrap rules on campus sexual assault. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos declared on Thursday that the era of rule by letter is over, as she announced plans to change the way colleges and universities handle allegations of sexual assault on campus. DeVos vowed to replace a set of rules enacted by the Obama administration in a 2011 memo known as the Dear Colleague Letter, which she said created a system that failed students. Instead of working with schools on behalf of students, the prior administration weaponized the Office for Civil Rights to work against schools and against students, she said in a speech at George Mason University. DeVos repeatedly spoke about protecting the rights of both victims and students who were accused of sexual assault, saying the conversation has wrongly been framed as a contest between men and women. She didn't detail how the rules will change, but said her office will seek feedback from the public and universities to develop new rules. The announcement was applauded by critics who say the rules are unfairly stacked against students accused of sexual assault, while advocacy groups for victims denounced DeVos's message as a step backward. Andrew Miltenberg, a New York lawyer who represents students accused of sexual assault, said he was encouraged by the recognition that accused students have been mistreated. Up until now, everyone's been terrified of saying what she said because the fear is it would be seen as being against victims' rights, he said. Activists from Know Your Nine, an advocacy group for sexual assault survivors, said the speech sent the message that colleges won't be held accountable for protecting students. I really fear that DeVos will take us back to the days when schools routinely violated survivors' rights and pushed sexual assault under the rug, said Jahal Singh, a policy coordinator for the group. Debate has flared in recent years over the 2011 guidance from the Trump administration, which requires schools to investigate all complaints of sexual assault and details how they must conduct disciplinary proceedings. Critics say the rules call on campus officials with legal experience to act as judges, and many say the standard of evidence required by the rules is too low. Unlike in criminal courts where guilt must be proved beyond a reasonable doubt, colleges were told to judge students based on whether it's more likely than not they committed the offense. Schools that violate the rules can lose federal funding entirely, although that penalty has never been dealt. DeVos echoed critics during parts of her speech, blasting the rules of creating increasingly elaborate and confusing guidelines and relying on the lowest standard of proof. Every survivor of sexual misconduct must be taken seriously. Every student accused of sexual misconduct must know that guilt is not predetermined, she said. These are non-negotiable principles. At the same time, she made clear that acts of sexual misconduct are reprehensible, disgusting, and unacceptable, and must be addressed head-on. Never again will these acts only be whispered about in closed-off counseling rooms or swept under the rug, she pledged. The speech drew about 24 protesters who gathered outside the auditorium, including some women who said they were assaulted on their campuses. Among them was Megan Downey, 22, a recent graduate from the College of William and Mary, who said she doesn't want the Trump administration to attribute more validity to the voices of the accused.
Women with abnormal pap smears are still being sought. The Cumberland County Health Department has tracked down fewer than half of the women who had abnormal cervical cancer exams and may never have been told the results, the department's interim director said Thursday. The county began looking for 159 women in late July after an internal audit revealed that the health department had given them insufficient notice, or no notice at all, of abnormal pap smears between 2011 and 2015. Rod Jenkins, the interim health director, told the Cumberland County Commissioners' Finance Committee that the department has heard from 66 of the 159 women it is trying to find. Jenkins said 26 certified letters to the patients were returned as undeliverable, and letters to 67 others have gotten no response, for a total of 93. The certified letters will be the final step in trying to notify the women, Jenkins said, but we will do our best to try to reach every patient before it's done. Notifying the women is important. If left untreated, abnormal cervical cells can become cancerous. Jenkins said the county has been using an enhanced database to try to track down the women whom he described as transient. Officials are also checking County Department of Social Services and other government databases in an effort to find the women, he said. County auditors initially began investigating the health department in May when it was reported that hundreds of women who had used the department's breast and cervical cancer control program had not been notified of their test results. In June, County Commissioner Marshall Faircloth and others announced that 8 women who had normal test results through the program were not notified in a timely manner. It was announced then that the auditors would look at 2 other health department clinics, maternity and family planning, because the person who oversaw the breast and cervical cancer control program also served as coordinator for those clinics. Records provided by the county showed that the employee was fired in September 2015 over issues with data entry. The health department then looked at old lab results from all 3 clinics and in 2016 sent letters notifying women of the abnormal results. But the notification letters were insufficient, partly because they didn't tell the women that immediate attention was necessary. The health department may never have even sent letters to 29 of the 159 women, according to the audit. The audit originally showed that 160 women were being sought, but officials realized that a duplicate name appeared on the list, Jenkins said. This article was submitted by staff writer Greg Barnes, who can be reached at gbarnes@fayobserver.com or 486-3525.
Allen to headline Fort Bragg 9/11 event. The former Vice Chief of Staff of the Army will be guest speaker for Fort Bragg's 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony Monday. Retired General Daniel B. Allen will speak during the event that also will feature a wreath-laying, taps and performances by the 82nd Airborne Division's All-American Chorus. The annual ceremony, held at the main post flagpole, is meant to remind the community that the nation remains at war and to look back on the sacrifices during the September 11 terrorist attacks and the wars related to fighting terrorism that have occurred since. The event will begin at 9 a.m. Allen, who retired from the Army earlier this year, lives in Brunswick County. On September 11, 2001, Allen was a colonel in command of the 3rd Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division at Fort Benning, Georgia. He later led the brigade into Iraq as part of the 2003 invasion. Later in his career, Allen served with the 18th Airborne Corps in Iraq and during the response to the 2010 Haiti earthquake. He deployed as commanding general of the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Hood to Afghanistan in 2011 before returning to Fort Bragg in 2012 to serve first as commander of Fort Bragg and the 18th Airborne Corps, and then as commanding general of U.S. Army Forces Command. Allen served as Vice Chief of Staff of the Army from August 2014 until June 2017. Their ceremony is one of several planned in the area. Others include Fayetteville Technical Community College. The ceremony is at 9 a.m. The student gazebo near the Tony Rand Student Center on campus, 2201 Hall Road. The keynote speaker will be Lieutenant General Jeffrey Munn, Commander of 1st Battalion, 319th Airborne Field Artillery Regiment. The Fayetteville Fire Department, Honor Guard, and the FTCC course will also participate. And Spring Lake, the ceremony is at 8:30 a.m. in the gym at Spring Lake Middle School, 612 Spring Avenue. There will be various speakers, and it is free and open to the public. This information is offered by military editor Drew Brooks of the Fayetteville Observer.
NCNG in Fort Bragg brace for Irma. The state of North Carolina has put its entire National Guard on standby to respond to Hurricane Irma if needed. A spokesman for the NCNG, Lieutenant Colonel Matt DeVivo, said 12,000 soldiers and airmen had received warning orders. That means be prepared to move to your units to support Hurricane Irma response if required, he said. The Guard is leaving little to chance in case of Irma, a Category 5 hurricane, barrels up the east coast toward the Tar Heel State. The storm could potentially begin affecting the state by early next week. DeVivo said the warning order puts troops on standby, but it also allows them to prepare their families for the potential natural disaster. We're getting ahead of it. If something bad happens with the hurricane coming through our state, the soldiers will already be in position and ready. Fort Bragg is also bracing for Irma. Tom McCullum, a Fort Bragg spokesman, said the installation was prepared to stand up an operations center to help officials stay organized, proactive, and responsive during the storm if needed. As we do with every major storm that has a potential to strike our area, we have been monitoring Irma's track and gauging its impact on us both physically and operationally, McCollum said. Fort Bragg, like much of the area, was hit hard by Hurricane Matthew last year. Floods led to washed-out roadways and other infrastructure damage. McCollum said teams from Fort Bragg's Directorate of Public Works have been inspecting some of those same areas to ensure storm-damaged systems, creeks, and streams are open in order to reduce flooding that may occur. Their vehicles and equipment are ready and reaction teams are organized and ready, he said. If Irma strikes, the garrison will be ready. Fort Bragg has a long history with hurricane relief. The installation has been used as staging site for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Teams from FEMA have set up the command center on Simmons Army Airfield at least 8 times since 1993, when officials poised themselves on Fort Bragg to prepare for Hurricane Emily. FEMA uses such sites to distribute blankets, generators, water, cots, and other emergency supplies to hard-hit areas following disasters. In preparation for Irma, FEMA officials said no decision had been made as to whether Fort Bragg would again host a relief site. Fort Bragg is one of our potential sites, but at this time not in use, said Mary Hudak, a FEMA spokeswoman. Based on the track of the storm, that could change. Local troops have been deployed in support of relief following several past storms, including Hurricane Andrew in Florida in 1992, Hurricanes Katrina and Rita in Louisiana in 2005, and most recently Hurricane Harvey in Texas last month. The North Carolina National Guard also sent soldiers to Texas. 2 teams of specially trained soldiers from the state's Hilo Aquatic Rescue Team, or NC HARD, deployed shortly after Harvey flooded a large swath of the Lone Star State. Those teams assisted with search and rescue operations, much like they did in North Carolina last year during Hurricane Matthew, when 1,700 North Carolina National Guard troops were called to state active duty. DeVivo said the NC HARD teams have been back in North Carolina for about 3 days, but were prepared to go back to work if needed. The State National Guard is preparing crews to help clear road raids, restore power, and provide other aid in the wake of Irma, DeVivo said. We're ready and prepared, he said. If the governor calls us, we'll be there.
This is a letter to the Observer written by Dwight Hall. Cut the cost of drugs. I have been battling lymphoma since 2010. Currently, I am in remission, but I'm still paying off medical bills from that time. I also have to pay for the drugs I need for my ongoing cancer maintenance and for high blood pressure and cholesterol. At one time, my cost for required drugs was over several $1,000s per year. This is money out of my pocket after insurance paid is parked. I am retired and on a fixed income, and the cost is almost impossible to cover on my limited budget. When I was receiving chemotherapy, I was taking 5 different drugs at one time. The hospital compounded the drugs for me and told me they were all extremely expensive. I was spending $1,000 a month for drugs. I have tried other times to change medications to get a cheaper generic, even though it was not what my doctor prescribed. I can personally vouch for generics not working as well as name brands. They're cheaper for a reason. The pharmaceutical companies are just a bunch of robbers. They put so many people's lives at risk. They have no compassion. They leave you alone out in the woods. My friends who retired when I did all face the same problem. Fighting cancer is difficult enough. Fighting to pay for outrageously expensive drugs should not happen. Our elected officials need to stop the drug companies' greed and take action to bring drug costs down now. And again, that's a letter from Dwight Hall to the Observer.
And this from the Observer's editorial staff. General Lee was right. Robert E. Lee's wisdom endures and may even be growing more relevant. As we continue to ignore his advice, we go farther astray. The great Confederate general strongly opposed the creation of monuments glorifying the Civil War and its participant. The statues, he believed, would only prolong the feelings that supported our country's most divisive and bloody war. Turning down an invitation to a monument dedication, Lee wrote, "I think it well, moreover, not to keep open the sores of war, but to follow the examples of those nations who endeavored to obliterate the marks of civil strife and to commit to oblivion the feelings it engendered." And so here we are, 152 years after General Lee and Union General U.S. Grant agreed upon a surrendered agreement that ended the war, and yet many of us are still fighting it. One of the latest casualties is one of the general's distant nephews, the Reverend Robert W. Lee IV, who resigned as pastor of Bethany United Church of Christ, on Monday, after the congregation decided to put his tenure up to a vote. The young minister rattled his congregation's nerves after he appeared on the August 28th MTV Video Music Awards. Lee introduced the mother of Heather Heyer, who was killed in Charlottesville, Virginia during demonstrations over a Robert E. Lee statue. In his introduction, the Reverend Lee praised the Black Lives Matter movement. "We have made my ancestor an idol of white supremacy, racism, and hate," the Reverend Lee said. "As a pastor, it is my moral duty to speak out against racism, America's original sin. The war without end has claimed another victim, and the county has said it wants to be post-racial. Just got another reminder that its goal is as elusive as it's ever been." Give me the TV stuff. And these TV postings for this evening, Channel 11 has 7:30 Wheel of Fortune, then EXO Super School Live, What Would You Do, followed by 2020. Channel 8, Fox has Seinfeld, EXO Super School Live, Beat Shazam, and the Fox News. Channel 22 has The Big Bang Theory, followed by Masters of Illusion, followed by Penn and Teller. A&E has Police Patrol, and Disney has Bering Sea Gold.
This concludes our reading of the Fayetteville Observer. Your radio hosts have been Catherine and Ronald Johnston. For our radio listeners, we will now join the Raleigh Network for additional programs. Thank you for tuning us in. We're enjoyed being with you today.
Sorry, so that was a weed.
We can read or we can edit. We can't do both at the same time.
Every month I'll bring you the latest in nutrition research from respected sources and nutrition letter and the Nutrition Action Health Letter. Nutrition News airs the first Wednesday of each month at 4 p.m. and is then available as a podcast at trianglereadingservice.org. Healthy eating is a journey, not a destination. So join me on the journey to your good nutrition. Remember, give peas a chance.